If it pleases the court, my name is Waters Initial K and I have been representing the defendant throughout this trial. Thank you, Your Honour. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Again, my name is indeed Kyle Waters and I am the defence lawyer in this case. It has been an absolute pleasure to appear before you in this case, and I appreciate your attention to detail throughout this serious matter. In the case before you, the prosecution has provided insufficient evidence to convict my client Death of possessing non-authority to carry out his work, lacking empathy and lacking mercy towards the human race. I would now like to address all elements of these allegations one final time to prove why my client is in fact not guilty. One of the allegations that the prosecution accuses my client of is not possessing any official authority to carry out his work, which concerns the transport of human souls from their bodies to the afterlife. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this accusation only comes after my client has completed one of the most difficult and rare jobs of his long and distinguished career, the task of collecting 75 million souls in the wake of World War II. It is only after this job is complete that the prosecution asks, why does Death possess an authority to carry out his work? Now, I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very simple question with a very simple answer. Death does what he does because he only can. Quoting Death himself, who could step in while I take a break? Imagine how catastrophic it could be if this essential job was left to a mere mortal like ourselves. There is a very high chance that a human taking Death's role during war could become deceased as a result of being caught in the crossfire and become one of the 75 million casualties throughout World War II. Now, ladies and gentlemen, even the prosecution has failed to present an alternative scenario to my client undertaking his work. And the same quality of results cannot be achieved if my client does not undertake his work. Therefore, there is no other option to have an immortal entity undertake this work. As seen throughout this trial, it is more than noteworthy that my client is of impeccable moral fibre and is more than capable of doing his job. True it may be that he is not commissioned by a higher entity or a government to undertake his work. Instead, my client acts like a good Samaritan and takes on a job only he can do. In a statement, my client says, who could ever replace me? Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is extremely difficult to understand why the prosecution has constructed their allegations on a foundation of 100% fictitious information. This accusation that my client lacks empathy on innocent deaths is completely absurd, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, the prosecution has falsely created the idea of a victim of death, because no one is a victim of death. Secondly, to create a pretense for these allegations, the prosecution has inaccurately implied that my client Death is involved in the factors that cause a human life to cease. Now, let's look at this from another perspective. Statistics show that every 6th person will die of a form of cancer. God forbid their souls they don't. Likewise, 327 people will die every day as a result of a car crash. Now, when doctors assess the cause of death, they do not say the cause of death is death. No, they do not indeed. They say the cause of death is either cancer or it is a car crash. Death cannot be the cause of death because death is only the result. Contrary to this, though, the prosecution still believes firmly in their fictitious case and pushes towards facts that are completely invalid to be validated by your good people of the jury. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you are all well-educated people, and I believe that you will be able to see through the fog of the prosecution's illegitimate accusations, because it is impossible for my client to show mercy if he is not involved in the factors that lead to an individual's death. To put it factually, my client is indeed only the result. This only makes the accusation of death not possessing any empathy or mercy, therefore invalid, further damaging the prosecution's already weak case against my client. The prosecution has now accused my client of taking souls too early and lacking mercy in the way he carries out his work. Now, looking at the circumstances my client is faced with and the conditions he has to work in, it is highly, ladies and gentlemen, highly unreasonable that my client should be expected to perform with 100% consistency all of the time. In a time of war, with over 75 million casualties, a momentary lapse in consistency should be duly accepted. As stated by Death himself, war is like a new boss who expects the impossible. He stands over your shoulder repeating one thing incessantly: get it done. Ladies and gentlemen, it would seem that you have all been involved in this sort of pressure at some stage in your life. The prosecution, however, lacks this understanding and does not allude to assess the human aspect of deaf's actions and that nothing can be perfect. Throughout this trial, the prosecution has routinely dismissed the numerous times that my client has carefully cradled each warm soul from their cold bodies with a calm approach to the afterlife to let them ascend on their way. It seems the prosecution has not provided an accurate analysis of my clients and further detriments their whole investigation, which is a foundation for their case, where they believe that my client is, as stereotypes imply, a Grim Reaper figure. Now, coming from my client directly, in his own words, he describes himself as, "I don't carry a sickle or a scythe, I only wear a black hooded robe when it is cold, and I don't have any of those skull-like facial figures you seem to enjoy pinning on me from a distance." Now, these statements have come from my client in one of his many testimonies he has said under oath, and it has only further highlighted the negligence the prosecution has possessed when conducting their investigations. Above all, these explanations explain why the case against my client is weak and invalid, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it will seem that you will all meet my client one day. It is inevitable. One day you will be in his gentle arms as he picks up your souls and listens to your last gasping cries as he watches your visions and frees you from fear. My client will do so without malice and exercise empathy as he elevates your soul to the afterlife. That I can personally guarantee. Finally, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I would ask you only one thing: to render a verdict that is fair. A verdict that is not guilty.